Good morning, Professor Kabudi. Shikamo.
Oh, marhaba. Good morning. How are you?
I am well. Habari za asubuhi.
Habari za asubuhi nzuri.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning as we have this important conversation surrounding the Tanzanian elections of 2025. If you don't mind, Professor, I shall get straight into it. The general elections recorded a notably high voter turnout. From your perspective, what contributed to this high level of public participation?
Yeah, as you may be aware that actually the big part of Tanzania is rural. In the last general election, the Independent National Electoral Commission has established about 99,000 plus polling stations throughout Tanzania. And the big part of the polling stations were in rural Tanzania. And looking at the record of Our Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan in her first term of what she has implemented with Chama cha Mapinduzi in empowerment and rural transformation, there were all indications that the voter turnout will be high, but also the very rigorous and well-organized campaign by not only CCM, but also the other 16 political parties which participated in the general election, to me, precipitated this big voter turnout. As you may know, that all the 12 southern plus villages in Tanzania are now electrified. All the 12,000 plus villages in Tanzania now are connected to mobile network phone. But if you look at the number of health facilities which have been built in rural Tanzania, and the road infrastructure, it contributed very highly to the high voter turn, which we saw and evidenced in the last general election. So for me, it was the record of her performance, but also the rigorous campaigns which were conducted by all the 18 political parties which participated in the election, and taking into account the nature of Tanzania, that majority of the people in Tanzania are rural folk who are normally very keen to participate in elections.
All right, Professor. Now, election day itself was described as peaceful before unrest later emerged in several regions. How does the government explain the transition from calm voting to violence afterwards?
First of all, the violence, vandalism, arson, and looting, as you have said, it was not throughout the country. It occurred in few regions and urban areas: Dar es Salaam, Arusha, Mwanza, Dodoma, Mbeya, Tunduma. And if you look at the areas, most of them are border areas, areas bordering Malawi, bordering Zambia, bordering the Democratic Republic of Congo, bordering Burundi, bordering Kenya. And the government believes that actually, as also it has been established by the commission, that there is a clear and compelling evidence that the violence of October 2025 was planned, coordinated, financed, and carried out by persons who had undergone training. And if you look actually at how it occurred simultaneously in these areas and locations that I've mentioned. So for sure, the election day was peaceful, but because there was an organized violence which took place immediately or during the course of election, and for us, which is unprecedented, actually marred the day from a peaceful day to a day of violence in certain areas of Tanzania, mainly urban areas and mainly areas bordering other countries which depend on Tanzania to access the sea for their export and imports. So, frankly speaking, this unprecedented occurrence, which has really pained our country, which has really troubled our country, which is regrettably and very remorseful, is not something which we expected to have occurred on that day, taking into account how the campaigns were conducted and how the voting went very swiftly, And this time, for the first time, we had a lot of polling stations to make sure that people vote and they continue with their other chores on that fateful day, which was declared as a public holiday.
Now, Professor, the unrest reportedly affected infrastructure, businesses, as well as regional trade routes. How significant was the impact both on Tanzania and neighboring countries, which you did mention?
Yeah, actually, the impact was very high, and thank God we were able to restore peace, order, and tranquility in the shortest time possible. As you have mentioned, infrastructure, both public and private, was destroyed. Shops belonging to private people were vandalized. Police stations, courts, and government offices were also banned, especially in Dar es Salaam, mainly Dar es Salaam. And the intention was to make to ensure that actually Dar es Salaam is cut off from the rest of Tanzania, but also from the rest of other countries which depend on Dar es Salaam as their harbor. And the impact of the 3-5 days where now activities were stopped in order to normalize the situation were very high. But as we speak now, the situation has normalized. We have returned to order, and trains and cars and lorries are moving on. And in the shortest time possible, we believe the economic situation will normalize also, because now trade is going on, let alone now the issue of oil, because of the conflict in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. But otherwise, the situation now has returned to normal, and trade routes to Malawi, to Zambia, to Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, to Burundi, to Rwanda, and Uganda, but also to Kenya have been opened, and they are going on seemingly through well.
All right, Professor. Now, security measures such as curfews, patrols, and temporary social media restrictions were introduced. How does Tanzania balance national security with civil liberties during periods of unrest?
Indeed, as you have said, Tanzania is a signatory to a number of international human rights conventions, but also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is part of the Constitution of Tanzania. But under the Constitution of Tanzania, we have a Bill of Rights. And in the Bill of Rights, for example, Article 20 of our Constitution allows demonstrations. Article 18 allows freedom of opinion and freedom of speech and freedom of press. But at the same time, in the Constitution, there are limitations to those exercise of freedoms and rights. And this is, your rights are limited when they infringe on the rights of another person, but also your rights and freedoms are limited when they affect public order, public security, and public morality. So always there will be a balance between your exercise of freedom and the rights, with the issue of freedom and rights of other persons, but also public order, public security, and public morality. And this is why, even in this very sad occurrence, one of the most important things that is guaranteed in our Constitution is the right to life. And the right to life cannot be taken without, is something which the Constitution protects. And what happened on the 25th of our Constitution, in order to ensure that the public security, there was public order, but also public morality. Definitely, in order to make sure that all those things were done in accordance with the law, this is why Her Excellency the President Hassan, using us under the Commission of Inquiry Act, which is Chapter 32 of the Constitution, she formed the Commission of Inquiry in order to do fact finding of what was the source of what occurred on that, who participated, and what were the after, in order to make sure that in future we are, if at all, since we don't expect it will happen again, because we want to take measures which will avert such situations occurring again. We'll be able to contain them in accordance with a few days later.
All right, Professor, we are having a few connectivity issues. Some of your message was breaking up. We did get the bulk of the message, so we will continue. The government introduced the Repair, Rebuild, Renew framework, and this was a part of the recovery process. But what does the framework mean practically for ordinary Tanzanians?
The framework for ordinary Tanzania, one, under the Repair, Rebuild, and Renew, the president formed a commission of inquiry, which came out with a report, and it came with recommendations. And one of the recommendations is the formation of the National Reconciliation and Consensus Commission. Even before the general election, the Chama cha Mapinduzi in its election manifesto had promised that in 100 days after assuming office by the president, it will form a reconciliation commission. And the intention of the reconciliation commission is to make sure that we sit down and deliberate on political, economic, and social issues which need to be repaired, or which need to be renewed, or which need to be rebuilt. So that, you see, since we got our independence in 1961, and we became a united republic in 1964 after the Republic of Tanganyika and the People's Republic of Zanzibar uniting to form the United Republic of Tanzania, there has been several developments. And when Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan assumed office in 2021, she came with a philosophy of 4 R's. That is reconciliation, resilience, reform, and rebuilding. So it is some sort of an assessment of what has transpired in the last 6 decades in order to move forward now in the new dispensation of what now we call the 2050 vision of Tanzania, with the intention of making sure that Tanzania will become now a middle-high income, but also will strengthen institutions of democracy, good governance, and accountability. But it will also make sure that actually we have education and skills that will equip our young people and youth to be effectively to participate in the economy of Tanzania, but also to make sure that actually the rural transformation in Tanzania, the rural areas in Tanzania, and the urban areas in Tanzania enjoy the same standards of amenities and services. So the repair and ordinary Tanzanians is to make sure that actually they are able to live in a country which respects their rights, which exercises good governance, but they live in a country where they are assured of social services which are equal for both the rural and urban, but also to equip youth of skills which will enable them to be able to survive, but also effectively work in a digital economy and in a globalized economy, but also to strengthen our regional trade and investment within East and Central Africa and South Africa. So that is what actually, in summary, is entailed rebuild and renew in the spirit also of the Tanzania Vision 2050, but also the election manifesto of Chama cha Mapinduzi of 2025-2030.
All right, thank you, Professor. Now, political reforms and dialogue initiatives have highlighted part of this national response. How would you describe the current state of democratic participation as well as political engagement in Tanzania?
The history of Tanzania needs to be taken into account. Very few people may not know that actually Tanzania was a colony until the end of the First World War. And actually it was it consisted of what is today mainland Tanzania, which became Tanganyika, Rwanda, and Burundi. The other colonies, as we know, were Togo, which was also divided, were Cameroon, and West Africa, what is today Namibia. And thereafter, we were put under the League of Nations, all of the former German colonies. And when the League of Nations was disbanded and the UN was formed, we were put as trustee territories of the United Nations. And of all these trustee territories, which were former German colonies, one to attain independence with the Tanganyika trustee territory, followed by Rwanda, Burundi, and Cameroon and Togo. The last one, which took a very tortuous route to its independence, is Sudan, what is today in Namibia. So under the British administration, there were no democratic institutions. The first elections we had in Tanzania, or Tanganyika for that matter, was in 1958, preparing ourselves for independence in 1961. From 1961 to 1964, we were a multi-party system, but from 1965 to 1992, we were a one-party democratic state. And I'm using the one-party democratic state because actually, although we were a one-party system, still there were elections after every 5 years to elect members of parliament. And from 1992, again, we returned to the multi-party system. And our first multi-party election after being introduced was in 1995. So the one in 2025 was our seventh general election under the multi-party system. And from 1992 to today, there have been tremendous changes, especially in the electoral system and in the electoral commission. In 1992, up to 1992, our National Electoral Commission, the chairperson of the commission was the Speaker of the National Assembly. But now the chairperson of the, now we have an independent National Electoral Commission, which was established by a law which was passed in 2024. So there have been reforms in the Electoral Commission. There's been reforms in election. And we do believe now, when we start now the constitutional review, we are going to strengthen the Electoral Commission, but we are also going to improve our national electoral system. And there are still debates of whether we continue with the current system of first the winner wins everything, which means constitutional system, or we go to proportional representation. But also in Tanzania, as you are aware, we have special seats for women. And for the first time, actually, in the history of Tanzania, since the reintroduction of the multi-party system, this parliament now has more female members of parliament than before. Actually, now more than 46% of our members of our current parliament are women. Other institutions which we need to discuss under the new constitution is our local government system, but as well as also our union, the structure of the union between Tanganyika and Zanzibar. So I do sincerely believe that once the committee of experts, which will be established by as recommended by the Commission of Inquiry, in order to start again the constitutional review process, because we had this process from 2011 to 2015, and then it was stalled. We had a proposed constitution which was supposed to go to referendum, but the referendum was not held. And now we want to establish again the committee of experts to come with a new draft constitution, which will also go to the referendum. And I believe during the discussion of the review of the constitution, we'll be able also to address many of the issues which are of concern to the citizens of Tanzania, the civil society, the political parties, and also we learn from other experience of other countries which have reviewed their constitution, and now they have new constitution. The current constitution has worked quite well. It is still working quite well, but for sure, we now need a new constitution which will take into account the developments in Tanzania, but also regionally and globally.
All right, thank you very much, Professor. Now, as we get ready to wrap up our interview, let's talk a bit about the Commission of Inquiry, particularly what key concerns or sentiments emerged most strongly from citizens during that process. And looking ahead, what does reconciliation, stability, and democratic progress ideally look like for Tanzania in the next few years?
Indeed, what happened on the 29th of October was unprecedented, was un-Tanzanian. The Tanzania we know and the Tanzania that is known all over the world is not the Tanzania we saw on the 29th of November. And this is why the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry, one, as you may be aware, yesterday, the President implemented one of the short-term recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry. She has now constituted and established a new Commission of Criminal Inquiry, because according to the Commission of Inquiry in their fact-finding, as I've said, they stated that they have obtained clear and compelling evidence that the violence of October 2025 was planned, coordinated, financed, and carried out by persons who had undergone training and the coordinators used various methods, including using disillusioned youth while ensuring that acts of violence occurred simultaneously in different locations in order to confuse and disperse. But at the same time, the commission stated that there are areas indicating possible criminal conduct requiring accountability. And in doing that, they recommended that there should be formed a commission of criminal inquiry and by the president in order to investigate and follow up on specific matters requiring further inquiry in order to address the allegations identified in the commission report. And yesterday, the president formed a commission with 4 commissioners. The chairperson is the Justice of Appeal, and 4 retired High Court judges who will carry out that. But also the commission recommended the National Reconciliation and Consensus Commission, which should be inclusive, and they recommended that it should be at different levels, at the village level, at the ward level, at the district level, and at the national level. And we do believe that the Reconciliation Commission involving the grassroots will be able now to enable Tanzanians to address some of the pressing political, economic, social, and cultural issues. But they also recommended the formation of the Committee of Experts on Constitutional Matters in order now to finalize the constitutional review. And they have recommended that by 2028, we should have a new constitution, which means we'll have 2 years before the next general election in 2030. But in the report, they also recommended many other measures, some of them which have already been implemented. Immediately after the general election, and the president in the new cabinet is now a ministry under her office of youth development, which now deals with youth matters, because as you are aware, not only Tanzania, but I do believe many other African countries, now the biggest component of the population, the demographics, are the youth. And the youth are facing a lot of challenges. Unemployment is one of the challenges that is a global problem now for the youth, which means now in the next 5 years, we are coming out with programs which will make sure that the youth are empowered, both politically, but also economically, so that they are able to effectively participate in the economy of the country. But as I said, we also, in the next 5 years, we are going to implement the recommendations of the Criminal Justice Commission, which again was formed by the president, and it was chaired by the same person who was the chairperson of the Commission of Inquiry. There are a lot of things which need to be done under the Commission of Criminal Justice, actually reforming our police, reforming our prison services. Quite interesting, when we talk of Namibia, one of the people who was very much involved in reforms of prisons in Namibia was John Nyoka, a Tanzanian. So now we are also going to reform our prisons services, but also to make sure that now we have a new education curriculum. From 2028, the basic education in Tanzania, which is compulsory now, will be up to secondary education. And now it was only primary education, but now secondary education will be basic compulsory education. But also we are going to implement a new curriculum. And the new curriculum will be much more on competence-based education system rather than knowledge-based education system, to make sure that all those who now graduate from our schools and universities have skills which will enable them either to employ themselves or to be employable by the private sector. So a lot of reforms are underway, and some of them being implemented, and some of them will shortly be implemented to make sure that actually by 2030, when Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan will be now exiting, because under our constitution, she will be finishing her 2nd term, and under the constitution, she will not be eligible to stand again for election. She will have left a Tanzania which is more developed, and people are more engaged in politically, economically, socially than what she inherited in 2011. So we have a lot on the agenda of reform and repair and renew, and the political will is there, and we do believe we have the support of the people of Tanzania to accomplish that mission which we have set for ourselves under Chama cha Mapinduzi, to make sure that again in 2030 we are in a position to show the people of Tanzania what we've done in the 5 years, and be also in a better position to stand for election and be elected to lead the next government from 2030 onwards.
Thank you very much for joining us on Africa. Good morning, Professor. As you spoke of the relationship between Namibia and Tanzania, and also speaking of education, I was reminded that a particular Namibian icon spent many years as a teacher in Tanzania. When he was in Tanzania, he went by the name Sam Mwakangale, and he is known in Namibia affectionately as the late great Sam Nujoma. Thank you for joining us. Asante sana.
Asante sana, tanke unene.
Thank you, Nene. Indeed, that was Professor Palamagamba Kabudi, Tanzanian Minister of State in the Prime Minister's Office with a focus on policy, parliamentary affairs, coordination, and persons with disabilities, as he was enlightening us on the Tanzanian government's position with regards to the unrest surrounding the 2025 general election.